Okay, by my clock, it's time to begin. So we will. Um, Welcome to the LAMPS working group. This is the first of two sessions. We're going to try and finish this time. We'll see if we are able. Um, we have the usual beginning chair slides. Note well, please pay attention to your rights, privileges, and most importantly, your responsibilities. Please don't contribute if you can't follow this. Please treat each other well. It's okay to disagree with someone's ideas, it's not okay to disrespect the person with those ideas. Please just be nice to each other. We have a very full 7-page agenda. Okay. So the first part of this is we published 5 RFCs since we were last together. So we are making progress on our agenda. Um, blue sheets are handled automatically by you logging into Metico. So please make sure you do that. We already have people doing the scribing. Thank you for sorting that out on the mail list instead of taking meeting time. And we have some documents that are already with the RC editor. So we have a good number that are about to come out probably between now and the next meeting. So that's pretty awesome. And we have a bunch that are with the RFC editor. I'm sorry, with the ISG for approval. One of these, the first one, we just generated revised examples for. That was posted to the list yesterday or the day before. And we're basically in the situation where speak now where we're sending it back to the ISG. Does anyone have any concerns with those examples that were produced? And Michael, is there anything more you want to say about that document?
I don't want to talk about
Okay. Okay. Hearing no objections, Deb, back to you. That, so it is the working group is fine with the changes that were made. Okay. So we have a lot of documents to talk about today. Um, we have these PKIX related ones, these SMIME related ones, and these ones that people would like for us to talk about adopting. We're going to cover them in that order unless there's an agenda bash. Okay, seeing none, we're going to go here and we're going to start with the certificates. And
All right. Hi, I'm Sean Turner. As Russ is pulling up the slides, I'm wearing this very festive shirt because I need to zen out a little bit because I have a little anxiety about presenting this because we're going to talk about something that got resolved after about 500 emails. And I do not want to rip the Band-Aid off of that. So everybody take a calm moment. When you get to the microphone, we're just saying what is up there now. There are still 2 issues and we'll talk about this.
we're waiting for Tim to bring up the slides.
Oh, okay, Tim. Awesome. Do I get the clicker?
You get the clicker.
Awesome. Cool. Appropriately pink slides.
Cool.
Good stuff.
And
I'm
now
Sean.
the clicker is enabled.
Enabled. Awesome. All right.
You
cool.
have the power.
This is us. All right. So we got 2 certs, 2 for 1 here. ML Chem certs. New version popped out. I'm going to put another new version out shortly because we've been like in the background tweaking things here and there. We did a little reorganization. We updated the ASN1 in text from the Great Private Key Format War. You can see issue 95, which I've actually already merged. We needed to put text in there about the ASN1 and consistency checks. And we've been slowly kind of poking at it a little bit here and there, thanks to Victor and Boz and Jake and others for getting those to go. We updated the examples, which is awesome, and we double checked them because Victor took the seeds that we had generated his own, and then people checked those, then they checked the ones we had, and then I checked that they were both the same. So that all looks thumbs up good. There's one last thing that we need to merge, which I think is minor, but I do need to get another author or somebody else to read it and go, yeah, that's good. So this is where I get the PTSD part. So this is after all the emails, this is kind of where we ended up. And this is representative of the MLChem 512 private key format and the public key, and then the text that went around the consistency check. So that's there for each one of the sizes of the key or the keys. We have different numbers. We checked all those, so they're all good. I think this is like, this is what's in the draft. This last bit of text was suggested by Tim, and it seemed to stick and nobody freaked out about it. So I stuck it in there and we did it. So I think we're good.
Wait a minute, go slower.
Go slower, okay.
Please read this text. If we're not done, say so now. It's already been on the mail list for about a week and a half. Okay, I'm not hearing anyone concerned.
There's a couple people in the queue. All right.
Okay.
Nokia. Any specific reason for not using must?
See 500 emails. That's where we ended up.
It's required. You should mention the exception cases.
Tiro, can you live with this text?
Yeah, that's really what this is
yes
about.
Or no?
This is can you hold your nose? Can you, like, in the way you work and the stuff you're in control of, can you make it work? That's really, because you're going to do the right thing, right? So it's a must. It's only when you really can't do it, you're going to like skip it.
So to clarifying question, is the intended thing here that you are on import, you are required to implement all three, or is this just like, here are three forms, go pick them? Because like this sentence, none of the text on the screen answers this question, but I don't know if there's like other text that you have in here.
You're correct. It does not answer that question.
Okay, and the intent is just to leave it ambiguous.
Correct.
All right.
Good. All right.
Can you live with that?
I don't know what to do given this, but like whether you all will be happy with that, I don't know.
Well, it's a choice, right? So you get one of the three.
I have to sit in your lap.
Well, there was nowhere else for me to sit. It was that or sit on a coffee cup.
We're fine then. So this is not a can you live with it or not, because that's not my job.
No,
So, but my job is to say, if you say should, you have to say what the ramifications of not doing the should are. Just think, there's just some little words that you can do in here that says, well, you might not do this. So you may, it's at your peril to not do that.
Well, then you wouldn't know that they matched.
Right. So just a word or two about that, or you can try not, but just think in your head what you would do, because you may get a comment on it. When it hits me, not me personally, but the telechat, you may get that comment.
Yep.
It's a theme.
It's a theme. Monty
Wiseman, Beyond Identity. Just approaching this, I'm fairly new to this. I got a tutorial on this thanks to Mike on Saturday, so I understand it. But just kind of with my pure spec writer hat on, if the first is a should, how could, just from the logic, the second can't be a must?
Yes, it can.
If the check is done, but if you don't have an option of not doing the check, it just seems like then you must reject it. I would argue that if it's an option to check it, you have a choice. But anyway, okay. But and I'll second Deb's comment that you got to say why you don't. So
We're talking about something like should perform the consistency check, and it says to ensure they're consistent,
So if you
which
don't
which
do it-
implies if you don't,
Yeah.
they might not be.
Well, but somebody like, yeah, we talked about a lot of this on Saturday, I guess. It's like, what are the bad things? Somebody could use a key, and it just seems like there ought to be something in the security section on what happens if, and I think that's where it belongs, not in this sentence, but in the security section.
There's a consistency check section as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a consistency check.
I guess I'm in queue. Mike Allensworth. Monty just said exactly what I was going to say. It's like, I think this should is a security related should, in which case it deserves a security related.
We'll double check the text in
Thing,
the,
right?
in the section.
So my understanding that the should, when you can't do it, for example, if you only support expanded keys, if you don't support seeds, then you of course can't verify them. So that's probably perfect thing to say, that you should perform the seed condition checks if you, and the reason why you don't want to do it is you don't support seeds at all, you only support expanded keys. And that would probably solve Steph's problem, that why we have a should and not must.
So I'm hearing some people have a little wish the language was slightly different, but I'm not hearing anyone say I can't live with it the way it is.
That's good, because Russ had a quarter ready to flip here. So
I do have a coin. Yeah, but you'd land on the edge with this group.
yeah. All right, cool. The other draft is the MLDSA certs one. Same thing. Basically, all the stuff that we did in one, we did in the other. There's some minor differences
like the seed
about some of the
sizes are
checks and the seed sizes and that kind of stuff. We'll get to that in a second. There was we did strike some text there about hash MLDSA constraints on TLS and EE certs. Some people said it didn't apply, so we took it out. We just still need to merge one little tweak about the private key text, and now I'm going to have to add another one. And then same thing. Luckily, the words are the same. So if whatever we figure out to do for the Chem one, we can maybe just copy the text over. But basically, you can see where it's the same private key format. The sizes are different. For the 3 different sizes of MLDSA, we tweaked all the sizes in there, updated the ASN1 module, et cetera. All right, so the next 2 things are the open issues. Everyone take a deep breath. So the first one is, do we need text for public key derivation from the private key? So I believe that for MLDSA, the way that the NIST spec is written, you can go from seed to private and public, but you can't go, it doesn't say how to go from private to public. So the question is, do we need to put that kind of text in our draft or not? Now it's useful, I'm not really sure that we really need to actually do it. So I'm leaning towards not adding new text because I would not like to bike shit on it for the next 4 months. I see a lot of people kind of being like, yeah, don't do it. So there, you can do it. I know Victor wrote some stuff for OpenSSL, and I know that Jake did some stuff for AWS that tells you how to do this stuff. The question is whether it's actually required in our document. It seems like it would be better to be in a NIST thingy, FAQ or whatever, because like it should be applied to like basically everybody. Mike?
Mike Allensworth. Just to be clear, I haven't read the PR play, I should, but this is math. This is new math that is not specified anywhere else. And we think LAMPS is the right place to define new math. Is that the proposal?
That is what some people said on the list.
Yes. Okay. I think there's some, I think you can, the way I'm not a cryptographer, the way I looked at it is apparently you can use some of the steps that were already there. So it would be say using these certain steps here. It's not math, it's just pointing at things, which would be a little bit better, right? But like also, if we don't need it, leave it alone because this group likes to bite shit on where the commas are in the sentence. So
my understanding is that the subset
Victor.
of algorithm 16.
yeah, he can tell me because he's one of the guys that did it. Victor?
Sure. So yes, it's possible. It is possible to derive the public key from the private using, a sequence of steps, no gaps from the PIP specification. The only thing that not everybody necessarily notices is that you actually get a consistency condition out of that. If you look carefully, when you rederive the public key, it overlaps with some of the data in the public, which might or might not match. So if one is very careful, one might check that once you've derived the public key, the T0 vector matches what's in the private. Otherwise, something is really odd. And I don't know whether that's something anything anybody would want to say. But I noticed that's not in the AWS implementation, but it is in OpenSSL. We check the consistency of the derivation with the private data, for what it's worth.
I'm looking at enough people shaking their heads, and I'm not feeling like we need this. It might be nice to have it. If it's not required, we shouldn't. And I guess I should point out that Victor pointed out to me that the text doesn't apply equally, because when you do ML-Chem, you can just extract the public key directly from the private. So, all right.
It's a subset.
I think this is a going once, going twice moment. Does anybody really want to submit a PR that they think they would like to shepherd through, that they can get done in, days? All right, good. That was sufficiently motivating to not do it. All right. So the next one, again, is another. This is where this could be a picture of the Bikini Atoll. So we have this question about external mu. And now these pictures, I don't really want to get into like the super depth of it, but the idea is the two pictures, the one at the top here and the one at the bottom, it's the pure MLDSA1, and then this is the one with the external mu. And then what we've specified is over here. And these pictures are courtesy of Tim Hudson. There's some really good pictures to kind of explain what the concern is. There are some people that think that what we have specified is not validatable by NIST or an NVLab lab. There are other people who think that that is not true. And so I don't know. So it was a private conversation. We did meet with NIST to talk about this, and they said, we're going to think about it. Maybe we can update our FAQ or see what we're going to do. But my question is whether we need to say anything about it in this draft, because some people care about FIPS and some people don't. And the other thing is, all of these things, if you did this, all of the implementations would interoperate. So I think my hope is that we don't need to say anything. Victor, I'm not sure if you're in the queue from the last time, if you wanted to say something about this.
Helps to unmute the microphone. Thanks.
Oh, hey, Tim. Sorry.
Not a problem. I think the conversations we actually had with NIST were pretty clear. This is not validatable as specified in FIPS 140-3. And I don't think there was any disagreement on the call from the validation people. Just remembering that the standards people and the validation people are two different groups, and they regularly hold quite different opinions. Those of us going through FIPS 140 validation, we have to pay attention to the validation group. I would suggest omitting external mu at this stage would make more sense than having it within the document, but yeah, that's up to the consensus of the group.
Quinn?
I'm Quinn Dang at NIST. I think currently somebody just reading the FIPS, and that interpretation is one of the good interpretations of the FIPS. However, in order to do the external mu, following the interfaces in the FIPS are not doable, and we allowed equivalent implementations. Therefore, likely we're going to allow call outs one or all of those situations to be allowed explicitly, make it clear in the very near future. The fact is that one of my colleagues, David Cooper, basically spoke about it on the email list, kind of signaling that what is we going to do. You cannot, from my personal technical review, you cannot follow the interfaces in the FIPS 204 to do the external mute correctly. So that there must be changes to the interfaces and into the function. However, you can do it in the equivalent way. That means you produce the correct signature of MLDSA.
So I think, are you saying, can I paraphrase and say like what we got in there can work once you make some changes?
Likely at least
Tim, if you want to speak, please join the queue.
likely at least one or all of those scenarios would be allowed, at least one or all of them.
Okay.
Likely, because I'm not making decision right now. I'm not.
Fair enough. Yeah. You don't have the document with you to go wave at us. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
So I think what it looks right now, with the current knowledge I have, the look is good.
Okay, thank you. Andre.
Andrei Popov, Microsoft. So I just wanted to quickly remark on this. FIPS validation is very important to us, obviously, at Microsoft. So any kind of issues in this space make this option highly unattractive for us. Also, Microsoft cryptographers have identified, they think, some potential security issues with this option.
Well, that's why I'm wearing the Bikini Atoll t-shirt.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I'm not a cryptographer enough to defend that opinion or dispute it, right? But they're going to do it on the mailing list if they haven't yet. So my question on this is, do we have to have that option? Is it like absolutely?
Yes.
We do. Okay. All right. Well, that's up to the working group. But
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, Niels Ferguson, I guess. I think you're referring to Niels' paper, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just saw it this morning.
Yeah, I did too. I was like, oh, that's fun.
Tim.
Not a problem. Thanks for letting me know the etiquette there, Russ. Appreciate it. From the perspective of what was just said from a NIST person, the devil's in the details in terms of external mu being an interface between two cryptographic modules. It's not an interface that comes back through to the application. And there's been quite a few conversations on that topic where there is quite a difference between the two in terms of, can you do this? So external mu between two cooperating modules is theoretically possible, but it's not a, this is going to be allowed unless NIST makes some updates to the spec or updates to the FIPS validation rules, which none of the labs have got any indication is going to be happening anytime soon. So I think publishing something that relies on something else happening that has not yet happened would be a little bit premature to include in an IETF document.
Victor?
Just to clarify one little bit, the key issue really is what is the certification level of the composite system in which multiple things are cooperating to produce the signature. If there are two modules with a call from module A into module B, presumably it's only as strong as the weaker of the two modules. But once external mu travels into the application, it becomes rather unclear as to what the certification level is at that point, because the application can, bypass or modify or otherwise do whatever it wants. And so you get the weakest of the two modules plus 0, and the validation of this is questionable.
Mike
Ainsworth. So I'm gonna maybe make things worse and attempt to make it better, but how do we move forward? Right, that's
where I was going after you were done. I'm like,
so, all right,
I'm authoring. You tell me what you want in the document.
So I think things that are like hard requirements here is we need a way to pre-hash. We need a way for my cat video doesn't fit in my smart card. We can't have a standard that doesn't have a way to, we can have other things, we can have multiple paths, but we have to provide a way to do my cat video doesn't fit in my smart card. We had thought that external mu covered that case. If it turns out, we also need that case be FIPS certifiable. So if we can't find a way to do pre-hashing that is FIPS certifiable, then we have to reconsider our stance on hash MLDSA, right? It calls that whole thing back into question. That's where we're at. Is either this goes or we have to reverse course on the hash MLDSA thing, right? Those are our options. Oh, good. I've made the queue.
me not-
Well, boy, did you create a whole bunch of people
Me
joining.
not
the
a
queue.
cryptographer, so let him get in line.
Hi, Scott.
Hi. Actually, I'm not dressing as a cryptographer, but I'm just wondering what is the actual, from terms of NIST, what is the security issue? We trust the application to sign whatever they want. What if we pass mu through the application? What's the, even if it mucks up, it's mucking up with something that it asked to sign. Now, I have not read Anil's paper, so there might be something there. I'm just wondering what. Thank you.
Right. So Niels posted it to the PQC forum this morning, or somebody at Microsoft did. So we'll see how that goes. Victor? Victor, you're muted if you're talking. Oh, you left the queue.
Sorry. Yes, I was agreeing with Mike. Yes, it's either a HashML-DSA or mu. Pick one. Yes.
Okay. David?
David Benjamin. So it sounds like we expect that NIST will, so previously when we thought this was fine, we made a decision to go with external mu. It sounds like there's some question about whether or not some of the assumptions we made are true, but it also sounds like NIST is most likely going to clarify things to match our assumption. So I would suggest that we can move forward by staying the course, because most likely we believe this will be fine. And then if it turns out that the thing that we expect does not happen, then we can go back and revisit it and, fidget with things if necessary. But
I mean, yeah, again, right. This is the end of working group last call. There's IETF last call and other things. So there's more.
But like we can always define new OIDs if like we found out that like, oh yeah, we defined a thing and this OID's no good. We'll like
we're using the NISToids.
NIST can define new OIDs as well. Like,
right. Quinn.
I think we will come out with some official statement regarding to this very soon. So be patient a little bit more. I think it's going to be very soon from NIST. Unfortunately, it's not on time for this meeting, but I expect it to be very soon, because we debated internally for a while and we came to a consensus about that. So I think from that technical point, I would expect the official statements or clarification or something would be out soon.
Thank you. John.
Hi. Yeah, I just had a kind of a question and an observation. So I think we should move forward with the way it is. But the question is, I know like hash then sign with RSA or EC, how is that any different than really this when you think about it? Because you have different crypto modules doing that. It's external menu does the same kind of thing. Yes, there's a little bit of differences, and you have to have you have to use shake, and you have to have the hash of the public key and whatever, those little things. But really, the way it works is the same. So to me, and given what Quinn has said and this is saying, it sounds like things are going to turn out. And I agree with what Benjamin said. If it doesn't, then we can just make a new draft with the hashoids and there, we're good.
Tim.
There. Hopefully now I can be heard. So the complication there is the devil is in the details, as I've said before, in terms of whether or not you can do this with the application involvement in the middle of an algorithm. Now, if NIST changes things and that's possible, then you can do external mu. It will also have an impact on some other interesting things in FIPS 140-3. So I'm remaining skeptical because I've not seen anything that comes out and says this is going to happen. We're going to get something back from NIST, but I'm not sure that any statement from NIST is going to say, hey, you can do exactly what's in this draft as it's specified. This draft also outright says don't do hash MLDSA, and I think that's a mistake. And if you read through the document that was sent out, I think you can see some alternate viewpoints that external mu is the one true approach to use. And I do think moving forward at this stage without either of those issues being worked through in more depth is premature.
Mike?
Slight correction to Tim there. It doesn't say hash mobility can't be used. It says it can't be used for CA certs. It doesn't prohibit it from being used in an EE cert for whatever protocol you want to use down the road. It's just when the object you are signing is an X509 cert or a CMS object, you can't use it. Correction there.
Okay. Queue's empty.
The answer is no.
I think it's half and half. So I'm hearing we're done with ML count.
Well, I got to do that one little tweak about what happens if you get
But we don't have any open issues on ML count. So I asked the authors to make that little tweak, post it. We'll send that to the ISG by the end of the week, if you can get it done. MLDSA, I'd love to hear what NIST is actually going to say. But we can wait a little while, but not too long.
All right.
Does that make sense? Does anyone disagree with that approach?
Cool. So half profit. All right, great. Good stuff.
You're half done.
That's correct. Thank you for everyone.
I just will observe that for every message you all saw on the list, I got an additional one. Okay, Tim, can you bring up the next presentation? Mike. Sure.
What? All right, this is just an update. You guys are terrible. All right, this one should be straightforward. This draft's been around for a while. It's pretty mature. We just made a small number of tweaks. Do I get clicking power? I get clicking power.
You have the power.
We think this one should be in working group last call. If I can find Hannes for like 10 minutes or more, we can make the changes Russ requested, and then this will be done. This is a 2-slide presentation. Here's what we changed. We changed a UTF-8 string to an IA5 string. We clarified some hint informative text. Russ pointed out that we busted our oids. We unbusted them. We changed some grammar. That's it. We still need to, Russ submitted 3 comments, which are easy to fix. And we're defining a new IANA registry, and so we need designated expert. We need to tighten up the process for how that designated expert. We need to pick a mailing list where you're supposed to go to request as an expert. That's it. We're done. We're done.
So I'm just curious, why did you make the change from IA5 to IA5 from UTF-8?
Because it's an FQDN.
So no humans are going to read this?
Correct.
Okay.
The hint here is intended for the parser to try and figure out. So like attestation, for those people who aren't in RATS, attestation is this, like there's like a billion vendors out there who implement attestation, and RATS has this conceptual message wrapper thing, and it's a CBOR thing. And so we're expecting that you're going to end up with a CBOR object inside an ASN1 object, and to actually figure out what's the actual data format all the way at the bottom, you'd have to parse CBOR inside ASN1. So we just have this hint thing that brings it up and lets you put an FQDN that says you need to go find the proprietary verifier from Crypto 4A and then take the blob and hand it to that thing. So it's supposed to identify.
So wait a minute. So it's a base 64.
I'm sorry,
encoded.
Hank. I've summoned Hank.
It's a base 64 encoded.
No.
You just said it's a CBOR object.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, it's bytes. Octet string. CBOR goes to ASN1 octet string.
Okay, so you're talking about what's in the other 3 fields.
The hint,
yes.
The hint that changed from a UTF-8 to an IA5 is because the hint is to be a FQDN that tells you what the content of those octet strings that you're not going to be able to parse because it's not ASN1. We're not expecting a human to read it. It is a hint to the parser to tell it what second level parser it's going to need to handle this thing.
Much better. Thank you.
Ta-da!
Okay.
Promise if I can find Hannes for 10 minutes, I promise to get you a working class call ready.
Anyone have concerns with the things Mike just said? And that the next version, not this one, will be ready for working group last call. Any concerns with that? Cool. All right. Tim, next presentation, please.
All right, I'm getting all the slots for the requested media already taken. I'm not quite sure it's not letting me unshare my slides right now. Oh, there it goes. That's better.
Sorry, I didn't know I had to push a button. Okay, Daniel.
All right, you don't even have to give me control because it's just a one slider. So if you move to the next
Okay.
page.
Then Tim has control.
All right, SLHDSA in X509, we updated the draft after the last meeting to allow hash SLHDSA public keys and identity certificates. I think that was actually slightly before the last meeting. We added SMIME capabilities. Thanks, Sean, for that. That's all the working group last call comments addressed. I know there was other stuff going on in the group, so this probably got lost, but we're ready to do whatever's next. And that's it.
So that I'm just to help me remember, that was the working group last call resolution. It's now ready to go to the ISG.
Yes, unless people have comments or it needs to do another
Right.
last call. I don't know.
Okay, so the authors believe that all of the comments have been addressed. Does anyone know otherwise? I will ask on the list as well. Okay.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Tim, you should still have control.
Yes, but I do not see slides for attestation freshness.
He's coming without slides.
It's not mine. I'm not an author, but Hannes's Seaboard's at the same time slot. Hannes told me to say that it's coming. It's just. Hannes told me to tell you, and I can read it. Should we just move this to the next, the second session?
Yeah, will he be here by Friday? Will we get it by Friday?
No, because he has
No,
you're
so,
right.
So what he said is the authors of Freshness wanted to wait for CSR attestation to get through because there's a dependency.
Which
so
we
this
just
is-
did. Okay.
Yeah, so I think Hannes and I need to post a new version of CSR attest, and then Hannes and Hendrik will post a new version of Freshness because they depend on each other.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, so Mike, thanks for saying that. I expected Hannes to be in the room. That's why I didn't say anything. But basically, this is the case as we kind of followed the CSR attestation for quite some circles. We now decided to wait for CSR attestation to be ready and mature, and then we adapt what is needed.
Okay. Thank you, Hendrik. Composites, huh? I hear all the air leaving the room.
Sean got away relatively free. Oh,
welcome, John.
John's here.
Hi. Greetings from the hospital down the road.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if John, you want to take a minute.
So I might get out on Friday, so I might be able to be there at the LAMP session on Friday. But Mike, do you want me to start?
As a person who cares about your health, I think leaving the hospital and running around an IETF meeting are not equivalent. Please stay in bed. I care about your health. All right, composites. So we're going to do 3 drafts in one set of slides, one of which is a cheat because it's not even adopted. Here we go. We're going to do composite signatures, composite chems, then we're going to have like one slide about search discovery.
Yeah, we put them together just for efficiency to take up less time in the working group. That's what we're hoping anyway.
Now you have we're trying to save you time. Okay, so what do we do?
Okay.
Yeah, John, do you want to speak? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I can do composite signatures, talk about that. So changes affecting the implementation interoperability. We basically added 2 new combinations. As you know, people keep asking for combinations. So there was an ask for an MLDSA 65 ECDSA P256 combination, based it's widely supported. The second one, MLDSA 87 with RSA 496, that was requested by Microsoft. We have other ones. People are now asking for P521 combinations. We have a slide about this later, but anyway, this is something that's probably going to continue to happen, and that's why we have a slide to talk about that later. Can I go to the next slide?
No, I think I can, and I'll just point out. Yeah, it's a question for Russ at the bottom there. Like, how do we cut this off? How do we just say we're done adding stuff? We're publishing this.
At some point, you just have to say that's all. If you want more, put them in a different draft. And I think it's up to this group of authors to decide where that line is. But you're not going to get to working group last call until you draw that line.
Well, maybe it'll be next week. Okay, John wants next slide. Next slide.
Yeah, okay, so this is the actually changes that affects the binary compatibility. So we did add the 32-byte static prefix. So if you remember, Falco had put an issue in. I think I talked about this at the interim, so we did put that there. In the next slides, you'll see a little more detail on that. Also, maybe a bit contentious, we removed the ASM1 sequence wrapping. Again, that was to make it more compatible for other protocols and places that want to use it. We'll talk about that in a little more detail, and then kind of some other minor things. Obviously, for prototype and testing, we need to update the OIDs. And then when used in CMS, now all composite combinations mandate SHA-512. So again, this is for signatures. So go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the composite signature generation process. The only thing that's changed between this version was we added the prefix there. And that prefix is the 32-byte value, which was recommended to us by Falco. And the value is actually the byte encoded string of composite algorithm signatures 2025, which just happens to be 32 bytes. So yay. So that's essentially, that's message prefix is now added, and the rest is the same. So if you go to the next slide, I think it's just the validation. It's basically the same thing. On the validation side, we need to use that prefix as well. Okay. Any questions on that? No? Okay. So, and this again, this is, oh, there is a slide. Okay, go ahead, boss.
Sorry, why did you add the prefix?
Why do we add the prefix? Because of the possibility of a stripping. So in a traditional, so you have a traditional algorithm like RSA and EC, and then you have MLDSA. RSA and EC don't have a context. So for a traditional verifier to be able to detect that maybe it was stripped, like someone, if an algorithm is broken, it could be stripped, or you could take them apart, then that traditional verifier could be updated to detect that using this prefix. That's the basic.
So I believe that in the current version of the, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe there's a clause which says that you can't reuse the separate component keys, or has that changed?
No, you can't. You still can't reuse the separate component keys. So but it doesn't mean people are going to follow guidance, unfortunately.
It's a hygiene question.
Falco wants to be able to wrap his existing RSA implementation with a thing that checks for this prefix and fails. That's it. Oh, yes, here he is.
Yeah, maybe just I wanted to add, so it was perfectly correct what John said, but I mean, the whole set of measures against stripping attacks is based on the assumption that maybe people are not following this guidance that you may not reuse keys. Because if you may not reuse keys, then there will be no certificate for the single public key. So the whole problem of stripping attacks doesn't arise. So this is why still being concerned with stripping attacks, despite this countermeasures, is justified in my view.
Yeah, and it's pretty easy to add, right? It's 32 bytes. It does add more entropy to it. I don't know. We agreed that it was okay. And we did talk about it at the interim, and no one disagreed with it. So anyway, it's there.
In the interest of minutes, we have GitHub issues on this. I think if you have strong opinions on this prefix, maybe take it to the GitHub issues. We can continue that thread offline.
Sounds good. So these next two slides are just, again, shows all the combinations. So the highlighted ones are the new ones that I mentioned earlier. So there's basically 16 of each. So this is the pure one. And if you go to the next slide.
Yeah, and as John mentioned, the bottom level, the bottom one was added for CNSA compatibility reasons, although I think 13 also probably already was. Anyway.
The bottom one was added for Microsoft, but also I guess because they use or want to use CNSA. Same thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Scott just said if they're doing CNSA, they don't do composite, and that's wrong. You can. There's that footnote that says you can. So we want to make sure that it's possible. Okay.
Yeah, and it's the same basically combination, except you can see the end of these have the hasher there. So the pre-hash is defined for each of them. Most of it's SHA-512. A couple of them, that lower strength ones, were paired with SHA-256. Mike, I'll let you do this one.
Oh, cool. This is largely the same as before. The same prefix. Sorry, the same encoding, the same length, basically non-ASN1 length encoding with the 4-byte length tags. We're doing a custom length tag, new prototypoids. Chem combiner stuff is interesting. So we've tweaked the chem combiner a little bit. The observation was made that ML Chem produces 256-bit shared secret at all security strengths, which means it's not variable length output. We don't need an XOF here. There's no reason to have the HKDF expand step. We're using either HKDF SHA-256 or HKDF SHA-512, which gets truncated to 256. In either case, you don't need an extract. So we just simplified everything and said we're only using HKDF. Got that backwards. You don't need an expand. We're only using HKDF extract in the combiner. Don't use the expand step. That also simplifies the how you get this through FIPS certification thing, because the HKDF expand step is a bit FIPS tricky. So this is a simplification we think is great. Similarly, we added more algorithms. We added a MLChem 768 with P256, which wasn't there before. And then we made an observation that SHA-3 is not allowed in CNSA. So if there are people who want to make an IoT light bulb and they care that it's compliant with all government specs everywhere in the world, you can't use SHA-3 as the outer chem combiner. So we've downgraded that one, or downgraded, side graded, whatever. That combination used to use SHA-3. It now uses HKDF SHA-384. So that's it. So we've added a new thing and we've adjusted the KDF of one thing. Ta-da.
Yeah. So this one applies to both signatures and chems, the 4-byte length prefix. We did have some discussion about this on the list, because before we had 3 bytes, and then I don't know, some people asked for 4, so we used 4-byte. Basically, you need a way, if you're not going to have ASM1 encoding, you need a way to separate the two things. So the 4 bytes represents the first MLD DSA message and then the rest of it. And that works. I've actually implemented it. It works well, but there's more. Someone has a question. Go ahead, boss.
So the MLChem and MLDSA keys are fixed length. Why? And you should know which one you're dealing with. So why need the prefix?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Sorry, a nurse came by.
For a given parameter, the length of the MLDSA and MLChem keys are fixed.
Yes. For the public keys, and yeah, private keys, we have external. Well, sorry, we have the different formats now, right?
Oh, this is the private key. Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah. No. So
No.
So we decided to be consistent. So we did it everywhere. Because of the private key, the changes in the whole discussion that Sean talked about, and that is variable length. We need this length prefix for the private key, but to be consistent just throughout the document, we did the same thing for public keys and signatures and ciphertext, just to be consistent. Technically, for those, it doesn't need to be it, and we have a later slide where we actually want to talk about the actual encoding, because this is one of our outstanding issues that needs to be decided. We need the working group's help. So does that summarize it well?
I do think Boss, is asking a question that I don't think has been debated all the way to the bottom, is if the MLDSA public key and the MLDSA signature and the MLChem public key, the MLChem ciphertext are all known length, do we need this? Is this just future-proofing the construction against future things that are not? And is that a good reason to do it? I sort of agree this hasn't really fully been justified. And it's
in fact, and in the previous, before we published 04, there was actually, before this whole private key thing happened, we did not have that encoded length, and we actually had text around saying, for future proofing, we could add a fixed length value, but then because we didn't need it, we didn't put there, and then when we did need it, we decided to future proof it. But anyway, I think this might be changing again when you see the slides coming up in a bit. But that's what we were doing. Yeah, Mike, do you want to do the next slide?
Go to Tom.
Tom.
Oh, Tom. Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I just want to quickly add that for what it's worth, Falcon does have variable length signatures. Of course, we haven't seen FNDSA yet. I don't know. I know that there is a draft version of that somewhere. So I don't know if maybe Kint can comment if that would still be in that version, or if they're going to mandate that it has fixed length. But that might be relevant to this, I guess.
Yeah. So it does. Oh, sorry. Someone else had a comment.
Question for Quinn is the FNDSA thing going to fix?
If FNDSA, the draft, if you happen to know and can say if that will have fixed length or not.
Unfortunately, I have not reviewed the latest version, so I'm sorry, I can't comment on that right now. But
Yeah, so for CMS, we aligned with the MLDSA draft, and we made SHA 512 mandatory, but others are allowed. Peter Pappas, we already had a couple issues open, so he had submitted a very long issue that we need to read and look at. So that might still have some changes coming. I don't know if Peter's on and wants to summarize that or not, but anyway, we will look at that when we have a chance.
Okay, David.
David Benjamin. Sorry, I wasn't sure procedurally where you wanted this feedback, but do not add the length prefixes on the other things. Like, we don't need to future-proof the combinations that, like, these combinations don't need them. We don't need to bother adding them, because if a future combination needs them, well, one, we should go tell people not to do variable length signatures, because that has always caused problems. But if we do, that combination can activate the length prefix and say, okay, well, for this OID, you go do that thing.
Yeah.
And this avoids a whole lot of complexity everywhere else.
Yep, that's great feedback. Thanks.
And I think, given the dumpster fire, we've established that we can have a public key format which is different than a private key format.
No kidding.
So consistency within the document now has precedent for not being. Yeah.
Victor.
Yes. One concern I have is that I'm seeing that in CMS, there are requirements to strictly line up the security levels of various components. Like you must use a digest whose strength matches the security level of your key. And I'm concerned a lot about the usability of that. I mean, if a user, needs to encode a message with, SHA-256 and for some reason has a key that's significantly stronger than that, why must they be published for using a stronger key rather than the specs say that the security level you get is the weaker of the two? Why are we enforcing alignment of the security levels of the components as a must rather than perhaps at most a should, or even, just you get the weakest of whatever things you mix it together.
Okay, that is good feedback. Can you post that somewhere in writing on the LAMPS list or on our as an issue in our GitHub, and we'll address that?
Sure, but in general, this applies much more broadly than your draft. I'm curious, whether the group has a view that we must now line up strictly in CMS the security levels of all of the various building blocks, or whether it's okay to mix and match because users will try and do that in applications, in APIs that expose these building blocks, and then we'll have to tell them, no, you've messed up. You can't use, this digest because your key's too strong.
Okay, if we're going to do this now, then I'll summon Dan Van Geest back up, or Ben, because we're just the composite MLDSA is mirroring. Composite MLDSA CMS is just going to do whatever MLDSA CMS did and do the same. So I don't know if Ben or Dan, if you can comment whether the MLDSA CMS draft has mandatory musts for hash function alignment.
I can't recall off the top of my head. I was also just quickly trying to pull up this Sphinx Plus one, and I haven't found that either, but certainly we can align things to how the working group wants it to be. I do think that the CMS Kyber draft has some words around there, although I don't remember if it's a should or a must. But that is a valid concern.
My memory is the Sphinx one says use the same hash as used in the tree.
No, that's for mandatory to implement. However, it specifies that you must have at least as many bits. It doesn't say you have to use the same hash, but it forbids you from using a weaker hash than the key. And so if your key is accidentally too strong, you're suddenly non-compliant, and you're supposed to reject this for some reason. I'm not a fan of this.
Yeah. So I know definitely one of CMS MLDSA and CMS Kyber has text to that effect. So yeah, Victor, if you want to post that to the list, and if there's any objections, we'll leave it. Otherwise, we'll remove that text or tweak it.
Hi, Ben Salter. Currently, I believe the draft says, the most recently published version of the draft says should. I think we got a comment during the last call, or technically just after the last call, which said, please change it to a must. We changed that in GitHub. We haven't published that version yet. We can change it back if people don't like it. I don't have a particularly strong view either way.
Thank you, Ben.
Does that mean that your MLDSA CMS and our composite MLDSA CMS are misaligned right now?
Yes.
Possibly. I have not read the composites draft in a while.
Ditto. Okay,
we should read each other's drafts.
Probably should, yeah.
Yeah, I thought we read, but I guess if they're now the problem is they're moving targets, right? So we read it at a point in time, and then one changes. Yes.
Okay, thank you for that comment, Victor. John, you're done with this slide?
Yeah. Yeah, this is just the little editorial changes, updated security consideration, added message format examples. When I was implementing it, I ran into some issues. And I'm like, having examples would be helpful, so I added those, and small editorial changes. You go to the next slide. Yeah, so these are the outstanding issues. We've already kind of touched on them both a bit. So we mentioned the hash composite. I keep hearing from people that they say we should just not have this and just have one. But we did talk about this at the interim meeting. Remember, we had the pros and cons, and it was basically split, and there was talk about it on the list. So basically, our authors group has decided, since it seems split, if people want to use hash composite, they can. If they don't want to use it, they don't have to. I know it just means we've defined OIDs that maybe no one uses, but I think people will use it because if we talk about removing it, then people are telling us that they want to use it. So for now, we've left the hash composites in there. I would have been happy to remove them, but as soon as we tried to, then people said they needed them. So that's where we are there. So I think we've got to rough consensus on that. We've had about a 50-50 equal split, so maybe no one is equally happy on both sides. So that's maybe rough consensus, but if you're not, let us know. But for now, it's still in the draft. And the second one, again, we touched on this, was the ASN1 sequence. We talked about the 4-byte fixed length format of the keys. Obviously, we had lots of discussions on this at our hackathon, and just even discussions now, which I'll get into, but I'll let JP, if he has something to say first.
Jean-Pierre Fizet, Crypto4A. I was talking to Mike before this meeting, and some manufacturers like me are the reason why we have multiple versions of the private keys, because there was like prior people that use them. But as far as composite keys are concerned, I don't think we have to support the 3 different format, given nobody's produced them before. So I think we can just go with one size of private key. If you guys decide to go with expanded or seed, I think that's good enough. I don't think we need to complicate all this.
As an author, I would love that. If the working group would let us just say the MLDSA component keys are going to be seeds and that's it, I would love that. That makes my writing job easier. If we don't have to import the 3-way choice, I would be happy.
Does anyone think that's the wrong thing to do?
So do you want to profile what's there and just say of the 3 choices, you must only use the one? So then everybody is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
That sounds like a good idea.
Okay, Quinn?
I'm sorry for a hangover. I just checked the current draft, and the signature size is fixed length.
Yeah, signature sizes, but we were talking about the keys, the private keys.
Good. So we don't have to handle variable length stuff in any of the things we know.
They're all fixed length.
Hooray!
Daniel.
Yep. I would like that we follow what JP just said, but isn't the concern that there will be HSMs out there which only do seed or expanded or either, and the combination of the public keys or the private keys could happen into a composite, could happen outside of the HSM. You could be pulling in HSM, a key from one HSM, a key from another, and combining it, or even 2 keys from the same HSM and then combining it. I don't know enough about HSMs, but
so
I thought the prefix would prevent that implementation.
So the argument here, as design principle for composites, we've been treating the 2 components as black boxes. We've taken the design approach that as authors of composite, we are not allowed to put requirements on the components. If you have an RSA that you've already implemented and put through FIPS certification, we're not allowed to tell you to change that. I think what JP is challenging is, while that makes sense for RSA, I'm paraphrasing, tell me if I'm wrong, that design requirement does not make sense for MLDSA. That we should be able to have an opinion on how you implement the MLDSA component. And so then the question, and I expect Tim Hudson is in queue to tell us that there are already legacy implementations of MLDSA that don't have their seeds, and somehow, so the question then is, does that apply to composites? Are there any composite keys in the world yet for which we've already thrown away the seeds and therefore are stuck with the legacy farmers? Or is composite still greenfield and we can still do whatever we want?
Okay, yeah, I'll defer to Tim.
Not a problem. Thanks, Mike, for predicting the future. Always fun from that perspective. No, it's more from the principle of, why would you define a composite system with a black box and then turn around and say, I don't support all of the formats of one of the underlying building blocks? It does not seem consistent. So if we support 3 different approaches for the format of a private key for one algorithm, Why would composite say, oh, I'm only going to pick one of those? It doesn't seem consistent, and it certainly doesn't seem interoperable.
Yeah, and it might be one of those fine-grained details that an implementation might not. Maybe they didn't read the draft enough, and then you're stuck. I could see that happening too.
And we're going to rule them out for composites because I'm sorry, I'm in the camp that doesn't like your particularly chosen format. Sorry, you can't do a composite. That would have a tendency to reduce the availability of and use of things. So it's more the consistency than other lots of keys out there, Mike. Just composite should be generic and not enforce anything on the underlying black box building blocks.
Yeah, I think I somewhat agree there. I can imagine an HSM like a smart card or a USB thing or whatever that says I can do RSA, I can do MLDSA, but because of this weird thing, I can't do the composite of them. And that seems weird.
JP, Jean-Pierre Fizet, Crypto4A. I understand that we had to go through what I call an aberration as far as like the MLDSA, because a lot of people had to adopt earlier version, and we went out there and gave them keys, and now they're burned into hardware. However, I don't think we need to duplicate this aberration, ad nauseum and just affect absolutely everything. This was a one-of, and I think the composite being greenfield, we should just let it fly, right? David?
I agree with that. We just talked about how we don't necessarily want to be consistent with the private key and the public key format because we made a whole mess of the private key format. The reason we made a mess of the private key format was because of this messy situation we are in. Fortunately, it sounds like we are not in this messy situation this time. So let's not shoot ourselves in the foot. We can just do the simple thing.
PHB?
Yeah, similar. I mean, basically, we're doing the 3 format stuff with the legacy stuff because there are implementations on the ground that are using it that have to be supported. So it's a backwards compatibility issue. I don't see that consistency is a good reason to carry forward bad ways of doing things. The way that I want to do things is have one way that is deterministic and has as little scope for people to play silly games as possible. Generation from seed is optimal. Taking somebody's private key data gives me the screaming heebie-jeebies. I do not like that. That is a malware vector. It's a kleptography vector. And I don't think that people have really fully grokked just how much vulnerability they're opening themselves up for. This is traitor key territory, not good.
Scott?
Scott Fleur. I'd like to point out that there is a distinction between the private key format issue with the pure MLDSA and what we have in composite. With pure MLDSA, we had to live with private keys which have been generated already, and so we don't have seeds, and we need to support those. With composite, this is a total greenfield. We already say, please do not reuse keys. So we can have them generate them fresh using something and keep the seeds around. Now, the implementation might have an issue with that. If you try to use an HSM, which just can't do that, but that is a different issue.
That's a good point. Thanks, Scott.
Victor?
All right. Well, so I think that's my understanding of why we want the different keys. It's not the history of extant keys for which one might have lost the seed, but rather that when the underlying technology for implementing the composite might have an MLDSA implementation that only supports expanded key input and simply doesn't support seed input, right? An HSM that works that way. So do we want to rule that out or what?
Rich?
I think I understand the consistency argument, and there's definitely something to be said for having the same pieces of code in multiple places. I'm not sure about the HSM argument being that important, since these are new things, and any simplification we can do to post-quantum composite signatures, we should jump at the chance. If, as a side effect, this helps make everybody move more towards doing seed only, all the better.
We have a little more to talk about about this.
Wes is telling us to speed the heck up.
Yeah. So we'll speed up. So we were thinking about 3 different options for trying to resolve this. Maybe we'll have more after the previous discussion.
I think this slide is now irrelevant because we just.
I don't think so.
Oh no, this is not private keys. This is public keys.
This is again for the encodings, right? So people were asking us again, why aren't we just using ASN1? So I mean, the choices are we could go back to just ASN1 like the previous draft. Okay, we could do that. Choice 2, go back to ASN1 using the sequence wrapping. That's like 2A. No, sorry. The first one, I got that mixed up, was what we have in the current draft where we use the fixed length 4-byte fixed length key, which we just went over. The second option was go back to ASN1 wrapping, but the second option B was to write it in a way that's friendly for people that don't know how to use ASN1. So there's an example there. We could have tables of byte codings, which just happen to be ASN1. But if something like someone like OpenPGP wanted to make use of composite and they don't have an ASN1 parser, they could just follow this byte encoding, put the bytes together. They've basically done ASN1, and then it's basically ASN1, but it's written in a way that's different than ASN1. Those of us that have ASN1 parsers, that's something we could do. And then if you go to the next slide, the third option. So this was the other idea. What we were talking about, we don't have to encode private keys the same way as we do public keys, right? So because you might never see a private key very often, except when you want to ship it via PKCS12 or import it somewhere, we could just use ASN1 there. So anyway, those were what we were thinking of the 3 options. Mike, you have some comments on those?
I vote option 3. Let's move on.
Is that what the working group likes, or
does anyone feel strongly that we should put the ASN1 sequence wrapping back in public keys and signatures? That's the question here.
Yeah, that's the question.
We're probably going to have to do something horrible for private keys unless we can get away with something not horrible, thanks to the last discussion. But
Victor, are you trying to join the queue?
Well, Michael asked a question. I thought I would say yes, but
He wants you to put the ASN1 back, he said.
Please justify, because I think you are the minority opinion here.
we already have parsers for it. It's existing technology for wrapping up sequences of structured objects. We're in an ASN1 context on the outside. In many cases, for example, the RSA key will also be structured ASN1 on the inside. Leaving out ASN1 in the middle makes no sense to me. And why do I need to write a new parser when I already have ASN1 parsers?
So the history here is, if you look back at the version 02 we posted in July, and then the version 03 we posted in October, we've been going less and less ASN1, and that's because of non-LAMPS working groups. That's because of COSE, that's because of HPKE. There's people in other working groups who say, hey, this draft is mature. Can we just cross-register these defined algorithms that, other than this vestigial ASN1, aren't really LAMPSy, they're really algorithms? Can we just cross-register them in like the HPKE registry and be done? And it's those other protocols that don't want to have to deal with an ASN1 layer. Can we just have public keys and ciphertexts that I can just hand to my Python library? I don't have to tell my Python library that it was a PKIX object versus a CPOR object, because there's no, if we don't include it, we don't have that problem.
But this is PKCS8 and SPKI. I'm not sure how they're not ASN1. It's kind of nonsense from my perspective.
So we could take this to the list and ask these questions. I would like to get it resolved very soon, or I guess Mike mentioned number 3. We don't hear that anyone's against that. We'll just go with option 3.
If you go back to the question you asked a couple slides ago about when do you decide you're done?
Yeah.
This isn't helping. And pick one, last call it, and find out if people can live with it.
Okay. Thanks, Rick.
Just start writing his email today. Okay. Yeah. Yep. That purple thing says the thing we just said. So there's a few things here. I don't think these aren't maybe creating issues that aren't really real, but some people have like the CMS stuff. If this third bullet there, we're prepared to remove the use in CMS section and put it in its own draft. That was if we get like, in particular, the feedback from Peter Popus. If the CMS stuff ends up taking months and months and months, and the pure algorithm stuff is ready, we might just remove it into its own document, because I don't want the pure algorithm to get bogged down forever if we're just debating CMS nits. So that's what that point was it was sort of a shot across the bow. If this stuff gets too complicated, we're just going to rip it out. Yeah, how do we draw the line? Yeah, we just do. Okay, cool.
And we talked about that, yeah.
Bonus stuff. I forget what's in here. Oh yeah, that's it. We stuck another draft in here.
Yeah, so I presented this at the virtual interim in January. At that meeting, no one objected to a call for adoption. Obviously, the mailing list exploded with other things, and a call for adoption hasn't happened. So I guess, can we say we'll do call for adoption, or do I just ping you, Russ, and say, do a call for adoption, please?
So there was a discussion of this last meeting that was very short, and the one before that they said you weren't ready, right?
Well, we were just, the draft hasn't changed. It's not the draft. It was just we weren't ready to present it. We presented it, so we think it's ready for being adopted.
Do you want us to make slides for Friday and do this properly? I can get off the stage.
I mean, I can redo it again if you want. We have the slides.
Does anyone in the room remember this draft?
I do.
That's not encouraging.
Sounds like you want us to present this properly.
Yes, I would like you to do that.
Well,
so why don't
we
you
did
submit
present
slides
it.
for Friday and we'll do that.
We can do it again, but we did present it. Okay.
You need slides for the interim?
No, slides for Friday.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, which one's next, Tim?
I believe my brain is functioning slowly.
Well, it is 3 in the morning there.
It is. It looks like the 52, 72, 73, 74 set.
Whoops. There you go.
It's a little high, but hi, Joe Mandel. I'm going to be talking about CMC Biz.
Yeah, or point the microphone at your mouth.
Is this better?
Much.
Too loud. Can't tell. Okay. All right. So quick update on where we're at. We had 2 PRs open coming into the week. We actually merged the first one, the 8137. All we did was just add SHA-1 to the document. Then I'll go over the algorithm requirements. That's the last open one. But before I do that, I'll kind of talk about like what the approach we took. So we tried to align with what CMP had, and then after that, we'll talk. We'll have a separate draft for PQ. Okay, so for hashes, we upped it to SHA-256, and then HMAC was HMAC SHA-256. For signatures, it's RSA with SHA-256. For envelope data, key transport, we kept it RSA. Key agreement, we kept it with Diffie-Hellman. And then password recipient info, no real change, but we are going to update the reference for 9579 biz.
Hi, Sean Turner, co-author on this. When Joe and I talked about this, we were like, well, hopefully we won't have a firefight. I'm glad there's no line here to do that. But we just basically would like keep it simple, stupid, feature parity, 128-bit, be done with it. We're not trying to like include everybody's crazy esoteric choices, drop ones that were never actually used. My crystal ball for RSA-OAP never happened. So let's just keep it simple, and everything else is pretty much optional.
Thanks, Sean. Where was I? Okay, for the controls, same thing. We just upped it to SHA-256, HMAC to SHA-256. So we added this piece in for backwards compatibility. So if servers do offer those algorithms, they should be doing some type of like inventory, so you know when to transition. All right.
Whoa, bless you.
So for the freshness, so CSR attestation. So we looked at that. I think we can do it the way it is. The attributes or extensions will just be in the type of request, whether it be the PKCS10 or the CRMF. For the attestation freshness draft, so right now there's no way to send a general message to the server. So we're going to have to define a other request message type or a format for it. And then we'll also use the nonce request value, nonce request response info types as a CMC control. We're also thinking about putting this into their draft, not into ours, if possible. And that's it.
So when will you be ready for last call? Now?
This week.
So one more rev or not, or now?
Merge and then publish.
So one more rev has to be posted. All right.
But it could be done this week.
Okay, Tim, what's next?
Next is the private key statement attribution stuff.
Private key attestation stuff.
It's a technical term.
So do we need to push it? Yes. I thought he was talking about the other one. This is very quick. We had a call for adoption a few weeks ago, like before Christmas. That was so long ago. All the private key format just sucked all the air out of the room. All right, Tim, you have control. So let me change that. I'll take control. All right, cool. So this is just the abstract from the document. Says what we're trying to do. Simple idea is that you generate a signature key. You use that to get a certificate using PKCS10 in the usual way. Then you generate a key management key, and you send that in a CSR signed by the certificate you just got. You send it to the same CA. It contains the same subject name. It contains a subset of the subject alt names. And then you use that, include this attribute that's defined here that says, I swear to you that the party that has possession of the signature key also has possession of this key. So it's more of a statement of possession instead of a proof of possession. And so basically, that's what this says, is the statement that's being assigned by signing this OID is that you have both private keys. The steps are generate the key pair, get the sign the CSR with the generated signature key, get the signature back. It will have a digital signature or a non-repudiation or both bits. So then you generate the key establishment key pair. You put that into a CSR. You sign it with the signature from one. And then you get back the certificate, and it will have a key usage of either key encipherment or key agreement. That's the idea. And that's the ASN1. It's really super simple, just the OID, really. And then the pointer to the signature certificate. So if it's very straightforward and clear. And this was all debated during adoption. So in my view, it's ready for working group last call. Does anyone think otherwise? Okay. Yes.
So I should read this again, and I will promise to do so. Yeah, I mean, I think you said it correctly at the microphone. This is not a proof of possession. It is a statement of possession.
Correct.
And that matters for how you use it. That matters for what your CA stack decides to do or not do, or profiles, or is.
Indeed.
So I volunteer to read this again and make sure that all of that usage guidance is properly captured. I think that's really important. If we just blast this through, I think people might try to use it in the wrong contexts. I'd like to slow down and make sure that all that is.
Please review the security considerations. Absolutely. So obviously, since I'm the author of this, Tim will make all consensus calls. But do you object to working group last call, or do you, or are you willing to read it and make those statements during working group last call? Okay, if you could do that fairly quickly. Thank you. What's next, Tim? We're moving the SMIME section, right?
Algernon was on the agenda as well. I don't see slides. Do we have an Algernon update?
Do we?
I guess the update is it got adopted during the time when the submission was closed. So I will upload a draft 00 and then I guess send an email about the 3 things we need to bike shed over.
Okay.
Yep.
There's so much to bike shed over when you're doing nothing.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. In that case, you're right. We're on to the SMIME session, and CMS Kyber is up first.
Okay. Daniel.
Do I have control?
I don't know.
Or it's only 3 more pages, so I don't need control.
Tim can give you control if he can figure out where the little button is.
Yeah, that's challenging. Which button are you looking for?
Go ahead, just say next slide.
Next
yeah,
slide.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so version 8 went through working group last call, so hopefully you've seen these changes already. There was just minor editorial changes, and then a section for the parameter security sets and sizes. Next page, please. So yes, there was working group last call. At the same time, there was another working group last call, so this one got a little bit overshadowed. Also, Also, our working group last call's email subject was incorrect for the first message, so it may have gotten even more overshadowed. There was 3 or so responses to the working group last call with no objections. I don't know if that's sufficient. I'll leave it up to the chairs to decide if we need to do another one. Next slide, please. We did get feedback directly that someone was having problems implementing it. They asked for intermediate values. So we have a new version that's not yet posted, which has intermediate values. And then a slight tweak to some text around using this CMS ORI for chem other info structure to make it clear that it's required to be encoded into the KDF. That was a problem that the people were having. ML Chem 512 with AES. Oh yeah, there was just a problem with the examples. I was using AES 256 instead of 512, so the examples have been updated. That's all I have. Victor's probably going to come and say something about should versus must for the matching of security levels. So go ahead, Victor.
Yes, exactly that. Yeah, why must we align the security levels?
So yeah, we can also make that change before posting another version.
Okay, why don't we...
Actually, I'd like it to be even less than a should, maybe even recommend, because should means that some people will enforce it, where I think the right outcome is that they should view the result as having the security level of the weakest component, but accept it.
So Victor, if you read RC 2119, recommend and should are the same thing.
Okay, yes, true. So right. I don't think it should be objectionable to use AES 128 with MLChem 1024 or AES 256 with MLChem 512 and so on. Any of these mixtures are sensible. They all have understood security levels, the weakest of the two. Why is it a problem to mix and match?
Okay, so as soon as we get Kyber certificates and CMS Kyber, one more rev, we're going to send them to the ISG. We'll get a security AD review. We'll get an IETF last call. So we'll be much closer to done. But given we don't have the external mu issue with Kyber, I'd like to get that one moving. Okay.
All right, thanks. Oh, Mike.
Victor, I think you raise a point that we should at least reach consensus on in the archives. Maybe we should start that on the list just so we have it documented why whichever way we choose to go, we should have a documented discussion of why we chose to go that way.
Well, what I think he's advocating is something in the security considerations that you get the strength is based on the weaker of the things in the suite. I think that's all he's suggesting.
Well, but no, it's a little stronger. Also allow mixing of different levels without there being explicit mandate in the document saying that they must match. That one of the two determines the security level of the other, or else you're not compliant, which is the current language essentially.
I see.
And I think rolled in there is what do we allow today? Probably a bit of a history dive is worth it too.
Right.
Do you know what to do, Danny?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. What's next, Tim? We're the second SMIME document.
Composite chem.
We're waiting for slides.
Yeah. Again, I do not see composite chem slides.
So we did it.
Oh, it was done together.
Yeah, we did it.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, brain working. DSA is next then.
I was not expecting to have to present this today. I had grand plans to come in with the elephant pants on Friday, but sadly I missed that. Cool. This is only 2 slides, so you can do it yourself. It's only 2 slides.
Well,
next slide,
I did it anyway.
Oh, you got it already? Okay, fine. Let's see if this works. It does work. Cool. So this is, yes, MLDSA in CMS. We first presented this in Dublin. 4 months later, we sort of think we're mostly done. Here's a kind of summary of changes. The biggest one is that we previously recommended implementing Shake, or Shake 256, as the digest algorithm. But Mike pointed out on list that we've sort of had this discussion already, and we are concerned there are CMS implementations that might have access to SHA-3 at the kind of cryptographic library level in order to implement MLDSA, but don't have access to SHA-3 and therefore Shake at the CMS level. And so to support those, we specify SHA-512 as the kind of interop must. This makes things a bit confusing, but it is the slightly weird compromise that we have ended up with. There seem to be a lot of those today. We have also moved all of the ASM1 key format stuff from this draft over to the dilithium certs draft. This has been a boon for us because it means that we could be pacifists in the great public key war or private key war of 2025, which has been lovely. I have not read those messages at all. I personally do not care what the private key format is as long as we choose one. Finally, we have included some test vectors. We have verified the test vectors we have, but please check our homework. We've included test vectors for the case with signed attributes. We have not included test vectors for the case where there are not signed attributes, I think because we couldn't get an independent implementation. If anybody thinks that's a blocker, let me know, or if you want to provide them, even better, but otherwise we will just go ahead without them. Cool. So the final point is to shake or not to shake. For those who aren't awake yet, that is a Shakespeare joke. Thank you. So Panos raised an issue on the GitHub, basically asking, should we provide Shake 256 as a digest algorithm for people who want code economy? Basically, if you want the kind of smallest crypt library possible, you're already implementing Shake because you need to use it in your MLDSA. Should we say you should also implement Shake 256? The problem with this is that you can't get code economy because we've specified SHA-512 as a must. It sort of maybe makes sense to also specify Shake as a should. In my mind, it's the sensible choice. I don't have a strong opinion. If anybody does, yeah, let me know. I think that is all I have to say.
Victor?
Just one comment. Unfortunately, our fault, but OpenSSL has a real problem with Shake as a message digest. There's some history there in terms of the legacy implementations that makes it difficult to support. I understand that this is just one implementation's internal, historical baggage, but it's really problematic to broadly support Shake at fixed length as a message digest.
Okay, I think that's fine. I don't think we're planning on moving it back to must, unless anybody strongly disagrees. So I guess you'll be fine with SHA-512 in that case. This is purely whether we should turn it into a should, and you can always ignore a should if you want. You probably shouldn't, but you can.
Quinn?
Thank you. Should not is the.
You should not.
Shouts not.
Should.
I think a should would be a good one if we decided not having as a must.
Okay, cool. I'm happy to make it a should. With regard to the status of this draft, it was in last call, then things happened. I think we can still make that change. I don't know if we need to go through last call again.
No. What we'll do is you'll update the doc.
Mm-hmm.
We'll say the authors believe the comments have been addressed. Does anyone have concerns with how they were addressed? And we'll deal with it that way. So you have one more rev to make, right?
We have at least one more rev to make. That said, Mike did raise the point earlier about, I think it was sort of Victor's point about aligning security levels, which we haven't actually decided on. So that may complicate things as well.
Okay.
But assuming that all goes fine, yes, there may only be one more rev to make.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? I just think it's really funny that you're going to discuss Shaker not on the spasm mail list. Oh. All right, Tim, I think we're to the last of the
We are up to call for adoption stuff.
Oh, wow. I'm
so
shocked.
CAA security.
You're not ready. Okay, we're going to.
Yeah, that's totally understandable.
I didn't think
we
are either.
as I would have bet a large amount of money this wouldn't have happened. But the next one is EUF CMA for CMS signed data.
Thank God I can present it today and not at 4:30 in the morning on Friday. I get to sleep. All right, so this, pardon me, this was presented, well, it wasn't presented in Dublin, it was presented in the interim in January or something. Oh,
Right.
I guess you still have control, right, Tim? So next
Yeah,
slide,
Tim has
please. So the problem was that there's a potential for different signing behavior when signed attributes is present or not, and that leads to some potential ambiguity when verifying, just as a reminder. Next slide, please. So yeah, we presented it during the virtual interim. There was a wide range of comments. Write a simple BCP was one, or even how do we even have to do anything? It's worth writing down more how to use the context for new algorithms, mitigation detections, revisiting ED 448. Next slide, please. Oh, so in the draft that we just posted a couple days ago, we went through as many of the RFCs that we could to see who is actually using ID data. This issue only affects users of the ID data e-content type, because if you're not using that, then the CMS RFC says that you must use signed attributes. So these are the ones that use ID data. Most of them recommend or forbid or require or forbid, but some are silent or not. I guess the most significant one here is obviously SMIME, and it recommends, so it does not require that you use or not use signed attributes. So this is just a data point to help kind of make decisions about what we might want to do. Next slide, please. So we're just looking for what to do for next steps. The two authors are inclined to just write a BCP, as was suggested by Russ, I think. Just saying that any new uses of CMS should not use the ID data content type. That kind of avoids this situation entirely. New versions that already use ID data should try to move away from it if possible. That might not be possible, or then at least require the use of signed attributes if they're still using ID data. We're wondering if the BCP should also have implementation guidance, such as if you must use ID data, do attack detection, or if you see any content type that's not ID data, then fail verification, or more. I guess I uploaded the wrong version of the slides. Or do we also want to possibly expand the scope of such a BCP to include something like RFC 9709, which was recently published, saying, you should use this. There was an attack by Davis, which I'm not familiar with. Falco might be able to say something about it. Do we want to include that, or is there anything else we might want to include in such a BCP? Does this sound good to the group? And if so, shall we adopt? Questions?
Okay,
Falco, do you want to? Sorry, Falco is a co-author, so do you want to jump in first?
Yeah, what you mentioned regarding the text, there's an ancient report of vulnerabilities of what is called naive sign and encrypt. So just one example, if you have a signed receiver message, an encrypted message with an outer signature, and you do not really understand this structure, then you might attribute the content of the plain text to the one who signed the document, which is misleading, as anyone can apply or replace an outer signature. That's just one example from these ancient texts. So what the idea would be then is to not analyze deeply or investigate, but just summarize what are the limits of this CMS format and what are things to consider when you design a protocol. Because I think these, to my knowledge, these have never been addressed. They have been pretty much ignored and hardly ever revisited again. So it might be interesting. And the RFC that Daniel mentioned is the one that ensures key separation for authenticated encryption, which led to a vulnerability we recently discussed. So that just to mention that it should be used in your protocols, that would be maybe a one sentence paragraph.
Valerie? Valerie, if you're talking, we're not hearing you.
Sorry, I pressed by accident.
Okay.
I'm very sorry.
Okay, so there's a bunch of things not on your table that use CMS, do not use ID data, or when they do, they require signed attributes. So they're kind of already implementing this BCP, PKI probably being the biggest one. I encourage you to go down this BCP path, and one of the things you might want to do in that is update the SMIME spec to just require the use of signed attributes. Be a one sentence change to SMIME 4.0. Okay, Michael.
Hi, Michael. I vaguely remember this conversation on a list somewhere. I guess I'm surprised about the suggestion to do this, and I'm confused by this. So in your previous slide, I think you said SZTP, but I believe it's actually RFC 8366 that specifies the CMS usage, just by the way. So this applies to all of RFC 8995, Brewski, and SZTP because we share the same fundamental CMS usage. But we went, I guess I'm a little bit confused by that first bullet. We should not use an e-content type, or we should not use.
You should not use the OID ID data
as the e-content type.
Correct.
But I don't think we do.
Then you don't have a problem.
So all right. So that's why I was surprised. The previous slide said that SCTP, meaning 8366, was unclear. It had a red box. I'll send you some updates for that piece, but I'm just trying to understand the impact. That's all. Thanks.
Okay. Rich?
Yeah, not that we're ever pedantic, but if it's a BCP, which I think is really the way to go, just giving advice, you can't actually.
You're right. Then the update doesn't work.
So, but on the other hand, it would be really fun to have a BCP that said, and these RFCs did it wrong, and let them fix it on their own later on. I'm totally serious about that.
Okay. I did forget to, on my updated slides, I did forget one thing in the implementations. We can say that it's recommended or required to use assigned attributes or not, but if you're using a generic CMS parser like OpenSSL or something, it often doesn't even check whether you're using ID data or not. It just starts it just starts parsing. So you might have to do extra work outside of your parser to see, am I actually using the ID that I expected? If I am I actually processing signed attributes or not? Maybe OpenSSL is not a good example because its implementation is decades old, but I'm not familiar with other implementations. So that's what I'm stuck with. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, I think the queue's empty. We have 10 minutes left. So let's see if we can get one more done.
All right. So it looks like actually I'm not sure we have slides for dual usage MLDSA and MOChem or draft Mandel. I'm not seeing any other slides actually.
Yeah, we have slides for draft Mandel.
Oh, do we?
Joe, you didn't send it? Okay. I'll tell you what, we are going to have plenty of time on Friday.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll figure that one set of slides out, although it's a very simple set of slides. But we'll have plenty of time. To my shock and surprise, we're really got through 2 major chunks of work. So unless there's any other business, we will call it here. All right. Thank you.
Run this by you first, and I'm going to run by everybody else. If you address depths, should comment. This is a good thing. You don't do the check. Oh, yeah. Oh, you might not do it. Don't do it.
Hey Russ, yeah, I had some questions regarding Friday. So I'm on the schedule to present on Friday. Do I send